Okay, so imagine you're so broke that your house is basically a character in its own right and not a friendly one. That's the situation for the Hyan family. We meet Laura Hyan, the eldest daughter who is basically holding her entire family together with hope and a few buckets. Why buckets? Well, their massive generations-old estate is so dilapidated that when it rains, it's an indoor shower experience. She's yelling to her brother, hold the bucket properly, while her sister, Laura, is checking if all the windows are closed. The whole place is a safety hazard. Her brother Ren, the eldest son, complains, damn this rotten floor, as they have to tiptoe around like ballerinas because the wooden floor might give out at any moment. You know if you're in a tight spot when walking across your own living room requires a risk assessment. The final straw comes during a storm so loud it sounds like the sky is throwing a tantrum. A massive crash later, and Ren is staring in horror, saying, I always thought it was just a metaphor. Laura asks if he's okay, and he just points up and says, look at the ceiling. The roof has quite literally been ripped off. So much for metaphors. Now officially homeless, or at least roofless, Laura heads to the marketplace to find a job. She's got her iconic, vividly red hair, so she can't exactly be incognito. A vendor immediately spots her and says, with hair as vividly red as yours, Miss Laura, it's hard not to. And then, with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, asks, your roof got blown away in last night's storm? The vendor confirms that their estate is as infamous as her hair and is widely known as the local haunted house. Laura defensively says, it may look eerie, but I swear there are no ghosts. Sure, January it just has a collapsing roof and a floor that's trying to eat you. Totally normal. When asked if she's thought about selling, Laura gets heartfelt, explaining that despite everything, her siblings love their home, and it's full of memories of their parents. You can't help but feel for her. She asks about jobs, but times are tough after a famine. The only lead is a place called the Clippershaden Estate. It pays generously, but there's a catch. The vendor leans in conspiratorially. Have you ever heard of Duke Ilyich Clippershaden? Cue the dramatic music. The Duke is apparently a legendary jerk. He's notorious for throwing his servants out onto the streets at the slightest provocation and dismisses marriage proposals from prestigious ladies without the slightest care. The vendor concludes, in Lucian there's a saying, if you don't know him, you must be a spy. Yikes. But Laura, being the pragmatic queen she is, shrugs and says, I don't think I'm in a position to be picky about my employer. As long as the pay is good, she's in. Girl's got a roof to rebuild. After securing the cheapest possible room at a local inn for her siblings, she has a sweet, slightly heartbreaking moment with her youngest sister, Lottie, who asks, you're not abandoning us, right? Cue amass a group hug that even her too cool brother Ren gets reluctantly pulled into. Because we're family, they cheer. It's very wholesome. So, with determination in her heart, Laura marches up to the Clippershaden Estate that very night. Because, why not visit the infamous mansion of a tyrannical duke after dark? What could go wrong? Her internal monologue is a panicked ramble. Maybe I should come during the day. Why did it have to be nighttime? It makes everything look even more eerie. No matter how I look at it, this place looks way more like a haunted house than ours, you think. She nervously calls out, hey, hello? Is anyone there? And the giant creepy door slowly creaks open by itself. Standard horror movie stuff, really. She freaks out, yelling, I am definitely not a weird person. I just heard they were hiring here, so... And then she sees a small child, a little girl about her sister's age. Relieved, Laura asks, are you a child of this house? The girl gives a cryptic answer, well, I do belong to this house, but also not. Then she tilts her head and asks the million-dollar question, but sister, can you see me? Laura, not quite catching on, says, hey, you shouldn't play pranks on adults. If there's an adult in the house, could you call them? Laura's brain finally short-circuits. No way, ghost. So there's Laura still planted on the floor, her mind completely short-circuiting after a cheerful little ghost girl passed through her like she was made of mist. Her brain finally stutters back to life with the horrified realization that she's just had a close encounter of the spectral kind. She's having a full-blown internal meltdown. Why would a pristine, luxurious mansion have ghosts? Her own crumbling, centuries-old estate was ghost-free. The irony isn't lost on her. She's stuck on the fact that her hand went straight through the child's head, a truly undeniable proof of the paranormal. While she's mentally spiraling, the very same ghost girl, utterly unfazed, asks why she's still on the floor and notes how quiet she's been. Then, as if to really hammer home that this place is not normal vibe, the girl's form casually splits in two to make way for a new arrival. A tall, impeccably dressed butler steps right through the apparition, politely noting they have a guest. He introduces himself as Handel, the butler of the estate, the picture of professionalism. Laura, still grappling with the reality of the situation, can only weakly think about the ghost while the butler, completely oblivious, offers her a hand up and asks if she needs a doctor. She scrambles to her feet, immensely relieved that her hand makes solid contact with his. She stammers an excuse about being startled and mumbles something about hearing there was a job opening. The butler smoothly confirms she's there for the Duke's secretary position and begins guiding her through the mansion. Laura tries to act normal, but she can't help stealing glances at the ghost girl, who is now happily skipping along beside them. Her inner thoughts are a jumbled mess, so frazzled she can barely form a coherent sentence. She notes that the butler is definitely, thankfully, solid. She can't help but be impressed by the opulence around her. The place is enormous and well kept, a stark contrast to her own home. She thinks that with this much wealth, at least she wouldn't have to worry about her salary being paid. But then the ghost girl locks eyes with her again and Laura's internal panic reignites. The girl pleads with her not to be ignored, saying she likes her. Laura becomes convinced the ghost is singling her out because she can see her. When Laura continues to pretend she sees nothing, the ghost announces that being ignored makes her want to play a prank, and she promptly starts miming choking herself. Laura, in a burst of panic, yells out to the butler that the ghost is grabbing her own neck. The butler stops and turns, a single puzzled word leaving his lips. Laura, realizing her mistake, desperately backtracks, pointing to a nearby painting and claiming it was just that, a really cute painting. She lets out a nervous laugh. The butler, however, looks thoughtful and remarks that she seems to know about art. He points out that the very painting she gestured to is always slightly tilted. He explains that no matter how many times it's straightened, it always slants back because a soul is attached to it. Laura can only squeak out the word soul in response. The butler adds almost casually that rumor has it a man who loved the painting never really left it. Everything suddenly makes terrible sense to Laura. The incredibly high salary makes perfect sense now. The place is teeming with ghosts. She decides right then that she needs to get out. She can deal with difficult people, but ghosts are a hard limit. But just as she's gathering the courage to tell the butler she's leaving, he announces they've arrived at the Duke's office. The door opens and there stands the man himself, Duke Ilyich Clivershaden, and he looks anything but pleased. He immediately asks his butler if this is another ghost, his gaze fixed directly on Laura. The butler tries to introduce her, but the Duke cuts him off, demanding to know her name. She barely manages to stammer it out. Almost before she's finished, he declares that she'll start working tomorrow. Laura is utterly bewildered, her protest about having no experience falling on deaf ears. The Duke dismisses her concern, stating that as long as he likes her is enough. Then he names his price. The number he mentions hits her with the force of a physical blow. Her mind instantly becomes a whirlwind of calculations, a new roof, her siblings' education, financial security for years to come. But her eyes dart back to the ghost girl, who is now enthusiastically introducing a new smoky-looking spectral friend. The mental image of dealing with this every day clashes violently with the tempting money. With immense effort, she forces herself to refuse the offer. She apologizes for the late visit but says she can't accept the job. The Duke is visibly confused, asking if the work is too hard or the pay too low. She insists that's not it. The job seems too easy for the enormous salary, making her feel almost guilty. He presses her, asking what the real problem is, emphasizing there's a reason the compensation is so high. At that moment, the ghost girl pipes up, calling the Duke brother and asking if this new sister will be working here. She says she likes Laura because Laura doesn't pretend she's invisible. The Duke's eyes narrow as he focuses on Laura. He asks her point blank if she can see what he's presumably referring to. Trapped, Laura can only whisper a confirmation. He lets out a sigh, and for a moment his imposing demeanor falters. He admits that he's the only one in the mansion who can see the girl. He confesses that she often plays terrifying tricks on him. Then, with the deadpan delivery of a man who has reached his breaking point, he reveals the shocking truth. He's scared. He's genuinely afraid of seeing ghosts all by himself. Laura is absolutely floored. This fierce, powerful Duke, who looks like he could intimidate a monster into submission, is secretly terrified of the supernatural inhabitants in his own home. His final practical argument is that while there might be more qualified candidates, he can't guarantee any of them would be able to see ghosts like she can. So the offer is laid bare. The huge salary isn't for clerical work. It's hazard pay for being his personal paranormal interpreter and ghost-related emotional support. Now Laura is left with an impossible choice: financial salvation for her family at the cost of being the brave one for a Duke who's a total scaredy cat when it comes to spirits. So Laura is now officially an employee of the Clivershaden estate, and she's being shown to her new room by the unflappable butler, Handel. Her internal monologue is a whirlwind of regret and confusion. She was absolutely 100% going to refuse the job, so how did she end up here? The story flashes back to just 10 minutes ago, right outside the Duke's office. The scene was pure chaos. A maid, having overheard snippets of their conversation, was dramatically announcing to the head maid that the Duke was clinging to a young lady he just met. We see a flustered Laura trying to pull away, yelling, "Let go of me." while the Duke, looking genuinely frantic, insists he hasn't even touched her. He's desperately listing offers, baffled that even promising her a life of leisure without working wasn't enough. He finally asks the million-flow question, "What should I do to keep you by my side?" This, of course, sounds incredibly compromising to anyone listening. Meanwhile, Laura is internally screaming that the pay is already too much for the work and that getting paid for nothing goes against her very principles. Then he says the magic words. He doubles her salary. On the spot, 1,000 full. He promises the work won't be difficult and that he'll make sure she isn't burdened. And just like that, Laura's professional beliefs crumble under the weight of a staggering bank account. The power of money moves her indeed. Back in the present, standing in her new room, she admits the truth to herself. It wasn't because his plea for companionship against ghosts was touching. It certainly wasn't because his overwhelming handsomeness clouded her judgment. No, the answer was simple and glorious. 1,000. Full. She's assigned a bed, and Handel mentions a key detail. The Duke specifically assigned her to a room where ghosts don't appear. Laura finally feels a glimmer of hope. Maybe this won't be so bad. She can send money home, fix the roof, even buy her sister that fancy cake she's always wanted. But her first night is anything but peaceful. The ghost girl, absolutely thrilled that Laura is staying, pops in with a new smoky friend in tow, making a racket all night. Laura didn't get a wink of sleep. The next day, she meets her new roommate, Sonia, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity who immediately nicknames her the 1,000 Flow Lady after overhearing the Duke's desperate bargaining. The rumor mill is already in full swing and everyone seems to think there's a romantic scandal afoot. Laura is utterly drained just from trying to keep up with Sonia's rapid-fire questions. Soon, a call bell summons her to the Duke's office. She finds him asleep at his desk, looking surprisingly peaceful. For a brief moment, she's caught off guard by how long his eyelashes are. He wakes up, and they share a slightly awkward, almost normal conversation. He even asks if she slept well. She, of course, lies through her teeth. Just as a faint sense of normalcy tries to settle, the ghost girl, Theo, appears, followed by the smoky ghost she'd seen the night before. Laura stares in horror at the two spectral children now loitering in the Duke's office in the middle of the day. She finally manages to stammer out the question burning in her soul. "Your Grace, why are there two ghosts?" The Duke, with the weary sigh of a man who has run out of excuses, finally confirms her worst suspicion. If she ever wondered why he hired her for the astronomical sum of 1,000 full, well, it's because the Cliver-shaded mansion isn't a home with a couple of ghosts. It's a ghost resort with a mansion attached. The place is teeming with them. Laura's soul practically does a backflip out of her body. "Your Grace, something like that. You should have told me sooner." She screams internally, her professional composure shattering. But then her practical side kicks in. Can she really afford to quit over a few spectral roommates? The answer, fueled by the memory of that massive salary, is a resounding no. She notices how utterly exhausted the Duke looks, and a surprising wave of sympathy washes over her. He admits he's constantly sleep-deprived because of the ghosts. Gathering her courage, she makes her first official act as ghost manager. She promises to take care of the children so he can finally get some proper rest. His quiet, genuine thank you is a moment of unexpected vulnerability. Her first task is to follow the two ghosts, Theo and the lively girl, to their favorite playroom. They lead her to a beautifully preserved but clearly unused bedroom. The little girl explains it was the room of her friend, Helena, who has since disappeared. Laura, now understanding ghostly euphemisms, realizes this means Helena has passed on. The room is immaculate, filled with a sense of quiet importance, and Laura notes a slight resemblance between the Duke and the woman in a portrait. The ghost girl then presents Laura with a gift, a notebook, saying her friend Helena wanted it given to anyone who entered the room. Feeling this is too significant to keep without permission, Laura returns to the Duke's office to find him, still asleep. She can't help but notice, with a purely aesthetic appreciation, that he's actually very handsome when he's not radiating panic. He pretends to still be asleep just to mess with her, and they share a slightly flustered, almost normal conversation. When she shows him the notebook, he identifies it as belonging to his mother, Helena. He encourages Laura to keep it, stating that as his secretary, she's not an outsider anymore. When Laura opens it, she makes a staggering discovery. It's not a diary, it's a field guide. The first page is a letter addressed to her from the Duke's mother, as if she had foreseen that someone like Laura would one day come. The rest of the book is a detailed log of the ghosts that reside in Cliver-shaded Mansion. The Duke reveals that his mother could also see ghosts just like them. He used to think her stories about vengeful spirits, ghosts who, over time, could turn dangerous and harm the living, were just eccentric delusions. He even traumatizes Laura with a story about his mother once bringing over 100 ghosts home, leaving him with a month of sleep paralysis. Laura, however, pieces together the truth. Helena wasn't eccentric. She was a benevolent exorcist. She would bring troubled spirits to the manor, grant their final wishes, and help them pass on peacefully before they could become vengeful. The Duke quickly clarifies that he doesn't expect Laura to do any of that. He hired her for two simple reasons: to handle some light paperwork, and more importantly, to be his ghost wrangler-in-chief, especially for the two active children. He admits that thanks to her, he just had his first good sleep in ages. He mentions there are 3 other ghosts, but they're reclusive and hardly ever seen. As he confidently declares he's never seen a vengeful spirit, Laura's eyes drift to a sinister, shadowy figure looming directly behind his chair, one he seems completely unaware of. Just as she's about to point it out, all hell breaks loose. The headmaid bursts in, screaming that Lady Helena's room is on fire. Panic erupts. The Duke immediately jumps to the worst conclusion, yelling at Laura for neglecting her duty and asking if the ghosts have turned vengeful and started the fire. Laura rightfully throws his own disbelief about vengeful spirits back in his face. But then the little ghost girl zips through the wall, frantically explaining that Theo's face turned bright red, and then, boom. They'd all rush to the scene to find the room engulfed in flames, and Theo, the quiet ghost boy, at the center of it all, his form flickering with a dangerous, angry red energy. It seems the Duke's theory about harmless ghosts might have just gone up in smoke, literally. Laura's new job has officially escalated from babysitting to crisis management, and her first day is proving to be worth every single full of that 1,000 full of salary. Finally, the fire in Lady Helena's room has been put out, thanks to the collective effort of the mansion's staff, but the real problem is still smoldering. Theo, the quiet ghost boy, is the one who caused it, his form flickering with a dangerous red energy. After the other ghosts see and lead to distraught Theo away to comfort him, Laura is left to face the aftermath. She finds the Duke staring at the charred remains of his mother's room, and her heart aches for him. He might be putting on a brave face, but she can tell he's deeply upset. Trying to offer some comfort, Laura opens up about her own situation. She explains that the reason she needed an advance on her salary was that her own family's roof was destroyed in a storm. She shares how painful it is to see a place full of memories get damaged, but also how repairing it means her family can stay safe and create new memories together. She gently suggests that Theo, who clearly loved Lady Helena, probably feels just as sorry about the fire. Her words seem to have a calming effect, but the moment is shattered when the Duke, overwhelmed, suddenly faints clean away. Laura is left staring at his unconscious form, a new wave of panic washing over her. The next day, Laura shows up for work completely exhausted, sporting some impressive dark circles. Her energetic roommate, Sonia, immediately assumes the Duke is bullying her, but Laura quickly shuts that down. If anything, he's treating me too well. Her exhaustion isn't from mistreatment, it's from the mental gymnastics of her new job and the physical strain of, trying to move her unconscious boss. She flashbacks to the butler discovering her trying to haul the passed-out Duke to his room. The butler, of course, misinterprets the entire scene, his eyes sparkling with the assumption that they've become that close. Laura's frantic denials only seem to convince him more, and he leaves her to struggle alone, wishing her a beautiful romance. The misunderstanding is both hilarious and utterly draining for her. The real source of her sleeplessness, though, was Madame Helena's notebook. She stayed up late studying it, focusing on the entries about Theo. The notes describe him as a 4-year-old boy who liked cookies, but never ate them, was close with Cian, and would sometimes hide in the wardrobe. Most importantly, the notebook states he was always longing for someone. Laura pieces it together. Theo is on the verge of becoming a vengeful spirit because of his unresolved attachment. She realizes that if she can figure out who he's longing for and help fulfill his wish like Helena used to do, she might be able to save him. But there's a massive hurdle. The Duke still firmly believes the concept of evil spirits is nonsense, a mere delusion of his eccentric mother. The next morning, she heads to the Duke's office, determined to ask him about Theo. To her surprise, he's waiting for her, looking much better. He feels responsible for the previous day's chaos and wants to repay her. Before she can even bring up the ghost, he presents his idea of a small gesture. A brand new, outrageously expensive desk for her, specially crafted from the rarest wood and finished with marble. Laura is horrified. The desk is so grand it looks like it belongs to the mansion's owner, not a secretary who mostly babysits ghosts. This is way too much pressure, she thinks, staring at the luxurious monstrosity. Finally, she steers the conversation back to Theo, and the Duke reveals he was just about to bring that up himself. He says he's taken action and that they should be arriving soon. Just as Laura wonders who else is coming, the door opens. In walks a man in priestly robes who announces he's come from the temple in response to an exorcism request. Laura is stunned. So much for not believing in evil spirits. While she was planning a gentle, cookie-based intervention to help a lonely child, the Duke's solution was to call in the Ghostbusters. Her plan to peacefully help Theo pass on has just been dramatically complicated. This expert from the temple sweeps in, and his first move is to completely mistake Laura for the Duke, getting utterly dazzled by what he assumes is a stunning noble woman. Laura has to quickly correct him, pointing out the actual Duke who is standing right there. The priest's swift and shameless pivot in attention is both hilarious and a little pathetic. The Duke gets straight to business, gesturing to the wardrobe where Theo is hiding and stating they need the ghost inside exorcised. The priest, who initially seemed a bit flaky, suddenly sobers up. He claims he could feel the ominous energy from the entrance and confirms this is a serious case. A ghost active in broad daylight is no small matter. When the Duke asks how to deal with it, the priest launches into a spiel about how difficult and costly exorcisms are, clearly angling for a big donation. The Duke, utterly unfazed, cuts him off with a simple, staggering offer: 2,000 flow for the temple if he resolves the issue. The priest's entire demeanor transforms in an instant. "I shall dedicate my entire being to this exorcism," he declares, his eyes practically turning into gold coins. He then ushers Laura and the Duke out of the room, claiming the process is top secret. Once they're in the hallway, Laura's suspicion meter is going off the charts. This whole thing feels like a scam, but her bigger concern is Theo's fate. She asks the Duke what will happen to him. The Duke calmly states that the ghost will be exorcised. When Laura presses him, he brings up the concept of reincarnation, a belief from the mythology of a destroyed nation called Lon. He explains that according to these myths, a soul can be reborn into a new life after it ascends peacefully. However, he drops a crucial distinction. Exorcism is not a peaceful ascension. It's a violent process that destroys and scatters the soul, ripping it apart and ensuring it has no future, no chance at reincarnation. Laura is horrified. She argues that Theo is just a scared child who needs help, not destruction. But the Duke, haunted by the fire, argues back. He can't risk the safety of everyone in the mansion. Even if Theo isn't a full vengeful spirit now, there's no guarantee he won't become one. Laura is torn. She understands the Duke's fear. If Theo is consumed by his grudge, he could try to possess her, just like other spirits have in her past. It's a real danger. But then she remembers the look in Theo's eyes. It wasn't one of malice, it was a plea for help. She can't ignore it. She thinks that if the myths are true and she can help him ascend peacefully, she could give him a chance at a happy future. Just as she's mustering the courage to suggest this to the Duke, a blood-curdling scream comes from the room. They burst back in to find the priest in a complete panic, clinging to the doorframe. He's freaking out because the Duke only mentioned one ghost, but he can sense another, far more powerful one in the room, Shan. The ghost girl scene materializes and starts yelling at the priest, defending Theo. She reveals the priest was the one who started the confrontation, bullying Theo first by hitting him and throwing things. "What kind of grown-up picks on a child?" she shouts. The priest, thoroughly spooked, admits he's in over his head. He says he can't handle this alone and needs to call for reinforcements from the temple, donation or no donation. In the midst of this chaos, Theo suddenly phases through the wardrobe, rushing past a terrified Laura, and in that moment she finally understands why she's felt so drawn to him. His eyes, wide with fear and sadness, he looks exactly like her little sister Lottie. That's the final push she needs. She can't let this child be destroyed. She turns to the panicked priest and asks one more question. What exactly happens to a soul that is exorcised? He confirms the Duke's explanation. Its very form is torn to pieces. It's utter annihilation. Laura takes a deep breath and makes a declaration that stuns both the Duke and the priest. She tells Theo that she thinks she can help him be reborn without any pain. She then asks him directly why he set the fire, promising to find another way. As the Duke stares at her in disbelief, she announces firmly, "I have another way besides exorcism." Her plan is in motion, and the fate of a little ghost soul now rests entirely in her hands. The professional ghost wrangler is about to become a ghost therapist. Laura has just stunned everyone by announcing she has a method other than exorcism. The priest, who can only perceive Theo as a terrifying cloud of darkness, is immediately skeptical and makes a mental note that a Duke's secretary talking to evil spirits is something the temple definitely needs to hear about. Laura, however, stands her ground. "It may look that way to you, priest, but he's just a child," she says, subtly throwing shade by adding, "You didn't call me just because you were scared of a mere child, did you?" The Duke, picking up on her tone, coolly reminds the priest that he's been speaking rather casually for a while, showcasing that old, infamous clitter-shaden lack of manners. But the real clue comes from seeing the other ghost girl. She explains that Theo has been acting strange. He used to patiently endure all her pranks, but this time all she did was take a wooden carving from him. And he erupted, setting the room on fire. Laura's mind, sharpened by reading Madame Helena's journal, immediately latches onto this. A wooden carving? The journal noted that Theo always tolerated Cian's pranks. For a child that patient to snap over a single object, It must be incredibly important. She turns back to Theo and gently asks, "Do you remember who gave you that wooden carving?" After a moment, the little ghost whispers a single crucial word, "Master." "The young master gave it to me." "The young master?" Laura's mind races. This must be the person Theo longs for. If she can find this young master in his memories, she can help him resolve his attachment and ascend. The priest, growing impatient, mutters about expecting a more dramatic, boom and flash style of ghost handling. Laura, ever pragmatic, asks him for a favor. "Could you hold my hand if I seem to be in danger?" The priest, perhaps seeing a chance to stay involved and close to the promised donation, eagerly agrees. The Duke, however, is immediately alarmed. "Miss Hyen, if it's dangerous enough to need the priest's help..." Laura explains her plan. She's going to try to see Theo's memories. The priest nervously interjects that the most common way to do that is through possession, but it carries a high risk of the medium losing their body to the spirit forever. Before anyone can stop her, Laura is already reaching out. The Duke shouts for her to stop, but it's too late. In an instant, the world dissolves around Laura. She finds herself standing in a sun-drenched courtyard holding a small wooden sword. This is Theo's memory. She watches as a young boy, Theo, spars playfully with a handsome, kind-faced teenager. This, she realizes, must be the young master. He's gentle and patient, and Theo clearly adores him. Laura can't help but notice he's incredibly handsome. He has a different vibe from the Duke. She witnesses a tender moment where the young master sneaks Theo a cookie, apologizing because it broke on the way. Theo's overjoyed, and Laura understands from the journal why he liked cookies but never ate them. It was the act of receiving a gift from his beloved master that he cherished. Then the memory shifts. The young master, presumably sneaking away from his duties, gives Theo a beautifully carved wooden lion to keep him company. "Will you play with this lion and pretend it's me?" he asks. This is the carving that started the fire. But the scene suddenly twists. The warm courtyard vanishes, replaced by a dark closet. Laura sees a younger Theo hiding inside, trembling. A woman, his mother, finds him. Instead of comfort, her voice is laced with a terrifying intensity. "Theo, my baby, there you are. Mommy was looking for you for so long." She finds the wooden lion and the cookies from the young master. Her gentle tone evaporates, replaced by fury and fear. Why did you meet the young master again? Why won't you listen to me? Do you even know what's in them?" Theo is terrified, confused. He whimpers that the lady, likely the young master's mother, has been kind to him. But his own mother's reaction is one of pure despair and paranoia. Why was I even born?" she sobs. And then little Theo, crushed by a guilt he cannot understand, whispers the words that have trapped his soul for who knows how long. I betrayed the lady." He feels he committed an unforgivable sin by accepting kindness from the young master's family, a sin that broke his own mother's heart. This is the unresolved guilt that festered, turning him into a vengeful spirit. Back in the present, Laura is physically experiencing this torrent of fear and sorrow. She screams, "I'm scared." Suddenly, she feels a strong grip on her hand, pulling her back. The memory shatters and she blinks back into the Duke's office, finding the Duke himself holding her hand, his face a mask of unprecedented concern. She looks up at him, her own face wet with tears she didn't realize she was shedding. The Duke, his voice uncharacteristically soft, asks, "Are you crying right now?" Laura has found the root of Theo's pain, but the cost of this knowledge is now written plainly on her face, and the Duke is seeing a vulnerability in her and perhaps a capacity for care in himself that neither of them expected.